He slapped her notebook onto the floor and said, "Use the calculator. You people are not built for real math." The class laughed. But 10 minutes later, he was the one shaking, staring at the board like it had turned into a wall of shame. If stories like this move you, hit that subscribe button now, because what happens next will leave you speechless. Everyone in room 4B had heard rumors about Mr. Langley, how he had a special way of dealing with certain students. Some said he never raised his voice. He did not have to. A smirk, a glance, or a pause in front of the only black girl in the room was enough. And today, he was not holding back. The girl's name was Nia. She was 13, skinny, quiet, always, sat in the second row, third seat from the left. She liked solving problems in her head. She said it helped her think faster. That morning, she had finished a full worksheet of algebra without touching her calculator. She placed it on his desk. With a shy nod, Mr. Langley picked it up, scanned the paper, then turned to the class with a grin. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said loudly, "we have a genius among us. Miss Nia here thinks she is smarter than the calculator." The class chuckled, unsure if it was a joke or a warning. Nia sat still, staring at her paper. He walked over, grabbed her notebook, and let it fall beside her. Nia flinched, but she did not move. Her hands stayed folded on the desk, eyes fixed on the floor. Mr. Langley stood over her and said, loud enough for everyone to hear, "If you are so brilliant, then solve this, right now, in front of everyone." He turned to the board and began scribbling numbers with a kind of twisted joy. It was a long equation, ugly, designed to confuse, not test. One of those problems meant to break confidence, not build it. He underlined it twice and stepped aside. "Let us see how far your mental math gets you now," he said. The room fell silent. Nia stood up slowly, not proud, not angry, just still. She walked to the board, picked up the chalk, and stared at the numbers. The class held its breath, waiting for her to panic, to stutter, to beg for a calculator. Mr. Langley folded his arms and leaned back like a man watching a trap about to spring. Nia looked at the equation for a full 30 seconds. Then she began to speak, not to the teacher, not to the class, but softly to herself. Distribute the 3. Combine like terms. Subtract both sides. Her voice was calm, steady, almost like she was reading a story she already knew by heart. Mr. Langley's smirk began to fade. Halfway through, she paused, erased one line, rewrote it, and continued. Her hand did not tremble. Her pace never changed. And within 3 minutes, the chalk hit the tray with a soft click. "There," she said. "The answer is -2. No one spoke, not even the teacher, until a boy in the back whispered, That is right." And that was when everything began to shift. Mr. Langley's face froze, not in confusion, but in disbelief. He walked toward the board like the numbers had betrayed him. He checked each line, trying to find an error, any mistake he could point out. His finger hovered above the solution, then slowly dropped. "She is right," he muttered under his breath. The room erupted, not with cheers, not with claps, but with stunned silence. Students looked at each other, unsure whether they had just witnessed a miracle or a mistake in the script of reality. The teacher, who always had the final word, had just been corrected, and by the one student he had tried to humiliate. But Nia did not wait for applause. She walked back to her seat, picked up her notebook from the floor, brushed it off, and sat down like nothing had happened. Not a word, not a glance, just silence. And that silence spoke louder than anything else. But then something unexpected happened. Mr. Langley, still standing near the board, turned back to face the class, and his voice cracked as he said, "We will take a short break." He walked out of the room, leaving the door slightly open behind him. Everyone stayed seated. No phones came out, no whispers. All eyes turned to Nia. And Nia just kept solving her next math problem like nothing had changed. But everything had. 10 minutes passed. Mr. Langley did not return, and when the principal walked in instead, holding a folded sheet of paper in her hand, the tension in the room returned like a cold wind. She scanned the class quickly, her eyes finally landing on Nia. "Miss Nia," she said gently, "could you please come with me?" For a split second, Nia hesitated. Was she in trouble? Was this another punishment for being too confident, too smart, too visible? But she stood up, quietly, the same way she had walked to the board. The class watched her leave, this time with something different in their eyes. Not mockery, not doubt, but something closer to respect. The hallway felt colder than the classroom. They walked in silence until they reached the main office. There, waiting behind the glass, was a woman in a long beige coat and glasses, holding a clipboard. She looked like someone important, but not from the school. The woman turned to Nia, extended her hand, and smiled. "Nia Thompson?" she asked. "My name is Dr. Elaine Carter. I am from the National Math Foundation. We received a submission 2 weeks ago from someone using only initials, NT. The solution matched a problem our senior fellows had struggled with for days." Nia blinked. "We traced the handwriting to a classroom worksheet," Dr. Carter continued. "Today's equation confirmed everything. You did not just solve it. You did it faster than our top PhDs. Would you like to spend your summer at Stanford's Young Mathematicians Program? Full scholarship, no test required." Nia stood frozen, the words landing slowly. From classroom joke to Stanford invite. And behind the glass, the secretary who once rolled her eyes at Nia now sat with her hand over her mouth in disbelief. Nia's lips parted, but no words came out. Her mind raced, trying to connect the dots. How a worksheet, a silent classroom, and a moment of humiliation had somehow turned into this. She finally nodded. Not with excitement, but with quiet certainty. Dr. Carter handed her a small envelope. "Inside is everything you need. Talk to your parents tonight. We will call them directly if you prefer." Nia took the envelope with both hands, holding it like it was something fragile. Her fingers trembled slightly, not from fear, but from the weight of it all. For the first time in a long time, someone had seen her without doubt. As they walked back toward the classroom, Principal Rivera leaned down and whispered, "You just made this school look better than it ever has. Thank you." But when Nia opened the door and stepped inside, the entire class turned to stare. Mr. Langley was back, standing by the board, pale, silent, his arms crossed but his voice gone. The principal cleared her throat and announced, "Nia will be leaving early today. She has been selected by the National Math Foundation for a special program." Her voice lingered on the word selected like it was meant for him. Mr. Langley blinked, then turned to the class. "Open your textbooks to page," but no one moved. Instead, a boy named Julian stood up slowly and said, "Sir, could Nia teach this one?" A few heads turned, then more, until almost every hand in the class was halfway raised, waiting. Mr. Langley looked at them, at her, then at the chalk, and for the first time in his career, he stepped away from the board. Nia walked to the front of the classroom, her notebook still in her hand, the envelope tucked gently inside. She looked around, at faces that had laughed at her just an hour ago, at desks that once felt like cages, and at the man who had tried to make her invisible. She did not smile. She did not gloat. She simply picked up the chalk. Her voice was steady. "Let us look at something simpler than what we did earlier, just so we can all build together." The board came alive, not just with numbers, but with clarity. She explained every step, pausing when she saw confusion, asking questions, drawing examples. And the room, once silent out of fear, was now filled with students leaning forward, raising hands, scribbling notes. Even Julian, the class clown, was quietly writing. Mr. Langley stood near the window, arms crossed, saying nothing, but his jaw was clenched. He had always prided himself on control, on keeping the class in check with sarcasm and silence, but today that power had slipped through his fingers, and the room did not miss it. When the bell finally rang, no one moved. Students stayed seated, still looking at Nia. Then, slowly, they began to clap. Not the loud, forced clapping adults do when a kid gets an award, but something softer, real, like respect earned, not demanded. As they filed out, a girl named Tasha stopped beside Nia's desk and said quietly, "I never liked math, but today I got it. Thank you." One by one, the class emptied. Only Nia and Mr. Langley remained. She walked up to him, extended the chalk with both hands, and said, "You can take it back, but you might want to start learning how to use it better." And then she left. The hallway felt different this time. Not cold, not tense. It felt open. Outside the school, Nia found her mother waiting by the car, holding a small lunch bag and looking worried. She had no idea what had happened inside those walls. All she knew was that her daughter had been called to the office and had not returned to class. Before her mother could ask anything, Nia opened the envelope and handed it over. Her mother unfolded the letter, scanning each word slowly. Her lips began to tremble. She looked up. "Stanford? Full scholarship?" Nia nodded. Her mother pulled her into a tight hug, one hand on the back of her head, the other pressing the letter to her chest like it was something sacred. "I always knew," she whispered. "I always knew what they tried to hide." That night, over dinner, the phone rang. It was a reporter, someone who had gotten wind of the story through a parent. Word had spread fast. By morning, a headline was trending online. "Teacher mocks black girl's mental math. She outsmarts him without a calculator." The school released a statement, cold, official, full of words like regret and policy update. But what mattered most was that Mr. Langley was placed on administrative leave, and not a single student asked where he went. Because something had changed at that school, a girl who once sat invisible now walked the halls like they were built for her. Not with arrogance, but with quiet power. And soon invitations began arriving. Talk shows, scholarship boards, interviews. But Nia kept turning them down, all except one. A small middle school in a nearby town invited her to speak, not as a guest, but as a mentor. When she walked into their auditorium, she was greeted by a room full of young black girls. Waiting. Watching. She took the mic, paused, then said, "You do not need to raise your voice to be heard. You just need to know that silence can solve more than numbers." And in that moment, every girl in that room believed they could do the same. Weeks passed. Nia's story traveled further than she ever imagined. From local papers to national news, everyone wanted to meet the girl who solved a complex equation and silenced a system built to doubt her. But Nia stayed grounded. She still helped her mom with dishes, still walked her little brother to school. Fame had knocked, but she answered it like a student, not a star. Meanwhile, back at her own school, something unexpected was unfolding. Mr. Langley's desk sat empty for days, then weeks. Students whispered that he had requested a transfer, too humiliated to return. But no official word came. Instead, the school brought in a substitute, a younger teacher, kind, curious, who actually asked the students what they wanted to learn. And, for the first time, math class became the loudest room in the building, not with noise, but with energy. Students debated, shared ideas. Even the ones who used to sleep in the back row now raised their hands, all because of Nia. Then, one chilly Friday morning, something arrived in the mail. It was not from Stanford, not from the press, not even from her principal. It was from Mr. Langley, a single envelope, no return address, just her name. Inside was a handwritten note. Nia, I failed you, not because you got the answer right, but because I never thought you could. You did not just solve a problem that day. You solved me. I'm sorry, Langley, she read it once, then twice, and without saying a word, she folded it up and placed it in her drawer, not out of pride, but as proof. Proof that even the most broken minds can be rewritten, not with revenge, but with brilliance. Spring turned to summer, and while most kids spent their break chasing ice cream trucks or scrolling through their phones, Nia packed her bag with notebooks, pencils, and one small worn photo, her and her mom at the kitchen table, solving math problems late at night under a flickering bulb. Stanford's campus felt like another planet, green, vast, filled with students twice her age. But Nia walked through it with the same quiet presence she always had, unnoticed until she began to speak. In her first seminar, a professor posed a problem no one could crack. Nia raised her hand. She spoke softly, but every head turned. Not just because she had the right answer, but because she explained it like it was simple, like it was music, like the numbers made sense in a way they had never heard before. By the end of the week, she was no longer just the young one. She was the one others asked for help, the one people listened to. But back home, something else was happening. Tasha, the girl who once said, "I never liked math," had started a club. She called it Brains Like Mine, a space for students who had been overlooked, underestimated, or outright dismissed. And guess who they invited to speak at their first meeting over Zoom? Nia. She appeared on the screen with her Stanford ID clipped to her shirt, her hair pulled back, her voice calm as ever. She said, "They tried to measure our worth with scores and stares, but they forgot. We are not here to fit their scales. We are here to break them." The chat exploded with claps and hearts, and far away, sitting in a classroom where she was once mocked, a new teacher watched the stream, eyes glassy, because in a world so ready to doubt, one quiet girl had reminded everyone, "You do not need permission to be brilliant." Years later, the world would come to know Nia Thompson not just as a math prodigy, but as a voice for every student who had ever been doubted, dismissed, or disrespected, because of where they came from or the color of their skin. She published a book titled Unwritten Problems, filled not with equations, but with stories. Stories of students who had been told they were not good enough, smart enough, or normal enough to succeed. Her words became required reading in classrooms that had once silenced voices like hers. Mr. Langley never returned to teaching, but he did attend one of her speaking events, sitting in the back row with a face lined not just with age, but with regret. Nia saw him. She did not call him out. She did not mention his name. But her closing words that night said everything. She stood in front of hundreds and said, "When someone tells you that your brilliance does not belong, remember this. Your mind is not something they get to measure. Your dreams are not built to fit inside their walls. And your silence, it is not weakness. Sometimes it is the sound of a storm preparing to speak." The room stood in applause, and somewhere in that sea of clapping hands, one man finally understood what real teaching looked like, not controlling students with shame, but lighting them up with belief. As Nia stepped off stage, a little girl in the front row ran up to her, holding a sheet of scribbled math work. Nia knelt down, smiled, and said, "Show me what you see." And just like that, the cycle continued, this time the right way. A story that began with a broken piece of chalk ended with something far greater. Legacy. If this story moved you, share it with someone who needs to be reminded that brilliance does not ask for permission, Drop a comment below. What would you have done if you were in Nia's place? And do not forget to subscribe for more powerful, real-life inspired stories that shine a light where others stay silent. Because sometimes, one voice is enough to change the whole classroom.